Officer James Collins had always heard the rumors about Cell 13. It was tucked away in the darkest corner of the rundown police station, a place where officers whispered ghost stories to spook the rookies and entertain themselves during the late-night shifts. Collins, however, was a man of science and reason. He scoffed at the tales of restless spirits and cursed prisoners, dismissing them as mere superstitions. That was until the night he was assigned to guard the cell. It was a stormy evening, with rain pounding against the windows and lightning casting eerie shadows across the station. Collins settled into his chair, half expecting to hear the usual creaks and groans of the old building. But tonight was different. The air felt heavy, charged with an inexplicable tension. He tried to shake off the unease as he scanned the reports on his desk. Then the voice came, a whisper soft as a breeze yet chilling to the bone. "Help me." Collins jumped to his feet, his heart racing. He turned towards Cell 13, but it was empty, or so it seemed. The dim, flickering light revealed a room with cold, damp walls and rusted iron bars. It was a typical holding cell except for the feeling that something was terribly wrong. "Who's there?" Collins demanded, his voice trembling. The response was a guttural growl that echoed through the cell. It seemed to emanate from every corner, filling the room with a malevolent presence. Collins clutched his flashlight and approached the cell cautiously. As he shone the beam inside, he gasped. A man in a tattered, blood-red jumpsuit stood at the far end of the cell. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow and filled with an unnatural fire. He extended his bony hand toward Collins, fingers curling like claws. "Help me," the man croaked, his voice a tortured wail. Collins stumbled backward, his heart pounding. He had heard the stories, but this was different. This was real, and it was happening to him. He radioed for backup, but his words came out as panicked gibberish. As he waited for his fellow officers to arrive, the man in red continued to beckon, his presence growing more menacing by the second. Collins couldn't tear his eyes away from the figure, and he felt a compulsion, a pull drawing him closer to the cell. When the reinforcements finally arrived, they found Collins standing at the cell door, his eyes glazed over, muttering incoherently. It took several officers to snap him out of his trance, and even then he couldn't explain what had happened. Inside the cell, the man in red was gone, but the sense of dread lingered. The other prisoners who had witnessed the bizarre events spoke in hushed tones about the man in red, the one who could make you lose your mind. In the days that followed, strange occurrences became routine in Cell 13. Inmates were assigned there as part of their punishment, and they quickly discovered the room's malevolent reputation was well-deserved. Sleepless nights and tormenting visions plagued those unfortunate enough to occupy the cursed cell. One prisoner, Carlos Ramirez, claimed to have seen the man in red while sitting on his bunk. He described the figure as a vengeful ghost trapped in the cell and said it whispered tales of despair and suffering. Ramirez became obsessed with the man in red, convinced that he held the key to his own salvation. As the weeks passed, Ramirez's sanity crumbled. He refused to eat, instead muttering to the empty air and scratching cryptic symbols into the cell's walls. His fellow inmates grew increasingly disturbed by his behavior, and they too began to experience bizarre phenomena. Lights flickered, doors slammed shut on their own, and chilling laughter echoed through the corridors late at night. The once skeptical officers now avoided the area, terrified of what they might encounter. One evening, Officer Collins was called to investigate a commotion in Cell 13. Inside, he found Ramirez standing in the center of the room, his eyes glazed and unseeing. He was repeating a sinister chant in a language no one could identify. Collins approached cautiously, trying to reach the disturbed prisoner. But as he got closer, Ramirez's voice grew louder and more unnerving. The walls of the cell seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, and the air grew icy cold. Suddenly, the man in red materialized before them, his eyes burning with rage. Collins felt an overwhelming force pushing him back, preventing him from intervening. He watched in horror as the man in red extended a spectral hand toward Ramirez, who convulsed in agony. "Join me," the man in red hissed. "Join me in eternal suffering." With a deafening scream, Ramirez's body contorted in ways that defied the laws of nature. He was lifted off the ground, suspended in midair, writhing in torment. Then, in an instant, he vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the echoes of his tortured screams. Officer Collins stumbled backward, his mind reeling from the horrors he had witnessed. The man in red turned to him, his malevolent gaze fixated on the trembling officer. "Help me," the man in red whispered, his voice dripping with malice. Collins fled the cell, slamming the door shut behind him. He knew he could never forget what he had seen, what he had experienced in that cursed place. Cell 13 was no ordinary cell, it was a gateway to something beyond human comprehension. As time passed, Cell 13 was sealed off and condemned, its dark history too terrifying to ignore. But the whispers of the man in red and the horrors of that haunted room continued to haunt the officers of the police station. A reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved and some places should never be entered.